Okay, now today I'm talking about an Oscar-winning movie. It won Best Picture in 1946. It also took Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. And that is The Lost Weekend, which starred Ray Milland and Jay Wyman, and was directed by the great Billy Wilder. Now, The Lost Weekend from 1945, directed of course, as I've said in the intro, by Billy Wilder, and starring Ray Milland, the Welsh actor, born in Neath, not too far from here. This film won 4 Oscars, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, and it's also one of only 2 films to not only take the Best Actor and Best Movie at the Oscars, but also to have a similar win at the Cannes Film Festival. Now, the film opens with an exterior shot, an external aerial shot looking down at the New York cityscape, and then the camera zooms in and comes in onto a set of apartments on 3rd Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, and we gradually sweep along the skyline, focusing now on these apartments until we come to one particular apartment in which there's a bottle of rye whiskey hanging outside the window, suspended on a piece of rope which is tied to the windowsill. This is the apartment of Don, that's Ray Milland's character, our hero, and as the camera takes us into the apartment, we find that Don is busy packing. He's due to go away for a trip, for a weekend trip with his brother Wick. And the conversation's going on. Don isn't keen on going. It hasn't exactly been established that he's got a drink problem at the moment, but the shot of the whiskey bottle hanging outside the window, and is rather the anxious way he's acting, it gives us the thing that it is Don, Ray Milland's character, who is the dipsomaniac, alcoholic character that this film is going to centre on. Now, he's not keen to go away, as I say. He's not saying that outright to his brother, but we get the impression he's not keen. His brother then says that the trip will be good for them, especially good for him, because of all he's gone through, directing this at Ray Milland's character, at Don. At which Don says, I haven't had a drink for 10 days. So there is the drink problem established. Now, shortly afterwards, Don's girlfriend, played by Jane Wyman, comes into the apartment. Ellen is her character, and she wants to wish the brothers off, but because she's going to the theatre. She's got a theatre, two theatre tickets. Don asks her who she's going with. She says on her own, and then Don says to his brother, surely we can postpone our rather than catching an early afternoon train, we can catch the early evening train. And at this time the viewer is thinking that that's great, you know, Don wants to go to the theatre with Ellen, so Ellen doesn't have to go alone. But then Don says, well, look, it's silly for Ellen to go to the theatre alone, to which his brother then agrees. But then Don turns the tables and says, I'm not going. It's you that's going. You can accompany Ellen. And we now, it's this clever little scene, the way this is played out, establishes the fact that the most important thing to Don at this point is that bottle of whiskey he's got hanging out of the window. His brother discovers the whiskey before they leave for the theatre, to which Don says he doesn't know how long it's been there. He claims he'd forgotten he put it there, because he apparently is recovering from his drink addiction. So no sooner is his brother and Ellen left for the theatre than he searches the apartment for any of the booze, looking in all the inventive places that he may have hidden but his brother has found it all. So he comes up with nothing. The cleaner lady knocks on the door and asks his brother there because she wants her wages. Don tells her through the door, he doesn't open the door, but he tells her through the door that he's not here. And she says, well, he would have left the money for me. He asks her where he would have left it. She says, in a sugar bowl in the kitchen. He finds a $10 note. He tells the cleaner that the money's not there. His brother must have forgotten, but he'll get it on Monday when they come back from their trip. And so reluctantly she goes. Don then leaves the apartment. He immediately buys 2 bottles of rye whiskey and ends up in a bar. All this is just this opening scene, perhaps 10-15 minutes of film, and it effectively sums up the addiction that the Ray Milland's character has got to alcohol. It's a wonderful film. This film causes arguments amongst film buffs as whether it qualifies as film noir or not. Because it's not, film noir usually deals on criminal matters, psychological, with the crime always usually tied into that. This doesn't have crimes as such, but it is very much a film noir because it is a psychological battle between Don, that's Milland's character, and the bottle. And it's wonderfully, brilliantly, powerfully depicted, you know. The black and white photography, and I love black and white cinema. I think that black and white is a pure form of cinema. It's almost otherworldly in a way that colour cinema can't be. It's wonderfully shot by Billy Wilder, particularly the scenes inside the bars that Don, Milland's character, frequents. And there's a great scene where he's sitting there at the bar. He buys himself a rye whiskey, downs it, puts it down. The bartender then comes over going to clean the ring that the glass has left on the table, and Don says, no, don't, I like to see them, I'd like to see them. And time passes and we see Don having several more drinks. Then there's a very clever scene later on. We know that Don has spent his time in the bar. We know he's had several drinks, but as the camera comes over Don's shoulder, we see these rings that these glasses of rye whiskey has made that Don asked the bartender not to clean away. And if we count them, we can see he's had 11 drinks in that afternoon. He's then told the time that he's got to go because he's supposed to be meeting his brother. They're catching a train. Turned out he spent all his entire afternoon boozing away, so he rushes back, too late. Still waiting there outside the apartment for him. He manages to avoid her by hiding away. Ellen is a lovely lady, and in his own way Don does love her, but he loves his whiskey more. So he hides from her, then he sneaks into his apartment. Then we see a scene where he hides the whiskey. He opens 1 bottle of the rye immediately. He's going to drink that. The other one he hides in the lampshade, which is rather an inventive place, I think. Later on in the film, he's forgotten about that bottle he's hidden up there, and he goes back to the bar, and then he hasn't got enough money, he hasn't got enough drink, and the barman says to him, what happened to those 2 bottles of rye you came in here with yesterday? And he realises that he's hidden a bottle of rye at home, but he can't find it. There's another really clever scene where he's in the apartment. He's absolutely wrecked. He's crashed out like this, you know. He's thinking he can't find that bottle of rye. Then he happens to glance up at the ceiling, and there's a reflection of the bottle on the ceiling because the light is on and it's casting this whiskey shadow on the ceiling. So he gets that, and there he is. He's back in his pleasurable area and in his happy place. There are so many clever scenes in this movie. The way it depicts the addiction of Don, that's Milland's character, an alcoholic writer, he feels that he needs his whiskey, he needs his drink in order so that he can work, that he can write, but in reality it's stopping him from writing. Every time he gets a glass in his hand, we get this swirling, ominous music which wouldn't have been out of place in a 1940s horror movie. And that's a clever touch, a lovely touch by the director, because it comes up that love-hate relationship that Don has with the whiskey. There's a scene, a flashback scene of how Don originally met Ellen, and he goes to an opera, La Traviata, So he checks in his coat, and there's a bottle of rye whiskey in his coat pocket when he checks it in. He goes into the opera, and in the famous overture scene, where all the characters on stage are toasting and drinking, it's a merry scene. The camera comes from Don's point of view. It's almost as if his eyes, it's done so well, so it's almost as if the character's eyes is actually the camera showing us the viewer what he is seeing. And you see all these characters, all this elaborate stage setting, they're all there toasting, but it zooms in on each and every drink, and we get a couple of little reverse camera angles looking at Don's face as he's looking at that drink, and the longing on his face is incredibly well portrayed and well put across by Ray Milland, who incidentally was a teetotaler, so he must have spent time with recovering alcoholics during the making of this film, because his performance is absolutely astounding. So then he rushes down to the cloakroom. He leaves the opera early to get his coat, only to find that whoever collected the coats, who checked the coats in, made a mistake with the ticket, and he's given a woman's coat. So he's forced to wait until the end of the opera, when everyone leaves, to find out who's got his coat. He's standing there with a woman's coat. Then he sees Ellen standing there with a man's coat. They exchange coat, exchange pleasantries, because Don, the Milan's character, can be rather charming, and they exchange pleasantries and arrange to meet again at another time. Don then, forgetting about the bottle of whiskey in his coat for a moment, picks it up and it falls to the ground and it smashes. And again, Milan's look of horror, of loss, is incredible. I thought it was fitting to review this movie at the moment, because we're on the 3rd day of January, and I'm going through dry January myself. Not that I'm an alcoholic, but I do drink whiskey on a daily basis. I have a glass every night before I go to bed. And there have been times, you know, when I've gone out and I've had a few too many whiskeys. So I'm using dry January as a chance to reset my own drinking, which is why The Lost Weekend, which is a film that has been known to me for very many years, appealed to me at this particular moment. And I think that if you ever feel that you're drinking too much and you watch The Lost Weekend, then it'll terrify you into, not into abstinence maybe, but into slowing down your own drinking. So anyway, that's The Lost Weekend from 1945, directed by Billy Wilder, starring Ray Milland and Jane Wyman, as I've said. I also want to mention the score from Nicolas Rosa, which is absolutely brilliant. Brilliant score. The film has aged very well, unlike a lot of films from the same period. Watching it now, it doesn't seem dated at all, although it obviously is dated, because it's a mid-1940s setting. The costumes, the clothing the characters wear, the society it depicts, you know, I mean, you don't see people leaning in bars smoking anymore, and there's no one vaping. But it's really aged well. It's a wonderful film. If you haven't seen it, then I would urge you to see it. There's a reason why it took Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay. There's a reason for that. So that's The Lost Weekend, 1945, directed by Billy Wilder. Absolutely wonderful. And if you enjoyed this video, then please consider clicking subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. But it's really cool, because it'll help the channel grow, it'll help get the channel noticed, which I would really appreciate. Also, leave a comment. Have you seen The Lost Weekend? What do you think of The Lost Weekend? What other classic movies would you like to see me review on this channel? Please, let's get a bit of a dialogue going, and also, of course, give this video the thumbs up.